HNLMS Karel Doorman was a Colossus-class aircraft carrier of the Royal Netherlands Navy, formerly the British ship HMS Venerable. She was sold to the Netherlands in 1948 as a light attack carrier. In 1960, she was involved in the decolonization conflict in Western New Guinea with Indonesia. In the mid-1960s, the role was changed to anti-submarine warfare carrier, and only ASW aircraft and helicopters were carried. An engine room fire took her out of service in 1968. She was sold to Argentina in 1969 and renamed R81 de Mayo. Purchase. Built at Camel Laird in Birkenhead on 3 December 1942, Venerable was launched just over a year later and commissioned on 17 January 1945. In 1948, Venerable's short career in the Royal Navy came to an end when she was sold to the Netherlands and recommissioned as HNLMS Karel Doorman, replacing a smaller Nirana-class escort carrier of the same name while in Dutch service. In 1955–58, she was rebuilt with an 8° angled flight deck, new elevators, new island, 40mm anti-aircraft guns, steam catapult, and all new aviation facilities and electronics were fitted, including a Dutch-built new radar. At the same time, a similar Dutch rebuild was done to her sister ship, the Brazilian aircraft carrier Minas Gerais. Cruises. Karel Doorman, frigate Johan Maurits van Nassau, and light cruiser Jacob van Heemskerk made a voyage to the Netherlands Antilles on 2 January 1950. Embarked on Karel Doorman was Prince Bernhard. The ships returned to the Netherlands on 4 May. In 1954, during a North American cruise, she visited Montreal, Canada for an air show appearance. Early in 1959, the ship made a trip to the United States and then continued on to visit the Antilles again. In 1960, during the Dutch decolonization and planned independence of Western New Guinea, a territory which was also claimed by Indonesia, Karel Doorman set sail along with 2 destroyers and a modified oil tanker to show the flag. In order to avoid possible problems with Indonesia's ally Egypt at the Suez Canal, she instead sailed around the Horn of Africa. She arrived in Fremantle, Australia, where the local seamen's union struck in sympathy with Indonesia. The crew used the propeller thrust of aircraft chained down on deck to nudge the carrier into a dock without tugs. In addition to her air wing, she was ferrying 12 Hawker Hunter fighters to bolster the local Dutch defense forces, which she delivered when she arrived at Hollandia, New Guinea. Karel Doorman was also to have visited Yokohama, Japan during this Asian cruise to celebrate the 350th anniversary of the establishment of Japanese-Dutch diplomatic relations, but, due to Indonesian and local protests, Japan withdrew its invitation. After the 1964 refit, Karel Doorman served the rest of her career mostly conducting NATO anti-submarine patrols in the North Atlantic, no longer carrying Striker fighter aircraft as part of her regular air wing. Karel Doorman also regularly conducted various exercises near Scotland during her career. Western New Guinea crisis. During the 1960 crisis, Indonesia prepared for a military action named Operation Trikora. In addition to planning for an invasion, the TNIO hoped to sink this aircraft carrier with Soviet-supplied Tupolev Tu-16 Ks-1 Badger naval bombers using as one Kennel Ks-1 Kometer anti-ship missiles. This bomber-launched missile strike mission was cancelled cancelled because of the implementation of the ceasefire between Indonesia and the Netherlands. This led to a Dutch withdrawal and temporary United Nations peacekeeping administration, followed by occupation and annexation of West Papua by Indonesia. Decommissioning. In 1964, following the settlement of issues threatening its former colonial territories and changes in the mission for the Royal Netherlands Navy within NATO, coupled with the huge costs for operating and maintaining an aircraft carrier, it was decided to withdraw her from the operational fleet by the early 1970s. This was to coincide with the arrival of long-range maritime patrol aircraft that were to take over the ASW role Karel Doorman had been tasked to perform ever since the start of the 1960s. A boiler room fire on 26 April 1968 removed her from Dutch service. To repair the fire-damaged new boilers were transplanted from the incomplete HMS Leviathan. In 1969, it was decided that the costs for repairing the damage in relation to the relatively short time Karel Doorman was still to serve in the fleet proved to be her undoing, and she was sold to the Argentine Navy, renamed R81 Cinco de Mayo, where she would later play a role in the 1982 Falkland Islands conflict. In the late 1960s, the NATO anti-submarine commitment was taken over by a squadron of Westland Wasp helicopters operated from 6 Van Spy-class anti-submarine frigates and 2 squadrons of shore-based maritime patrol aircraft. These were 1 squadron of Breguet Atlantique Sea reconnaissance aircraft and 1 of P-2 Neptunes Air Wing, first deploying as an attack carrier with 24 World War II-era propeller-driven Fairey Firefly strike fighters and Hawker Sea Fury fighters. For sea rescue, a Supermarine Sea Otter flying boat was carried. It was replaced by a Sikorsky S-51 helicopter. From 1958, she operated with an ASW strike profile with up to 14 Grum NTBF Avenger ASW torpedo bombers, 10 Hawker Sea Hawk fighters and 2 Sikorsky S-55 ASW helicopters. In 1960, the Royal Netherlands Navy received 17 Canadian-built Grumman S-2 Traggers ASW aircraft formerly used by the Royal Canadian Navy, changing roles to a dedicated NATO anti-submarine warfare carrier. A wing of 8 Grumman S-2 Traggers and 6 Sikorsky S-58 ASW helicopters served aboard from 1961 until the 1968 shipboard fire and removal from Dutch service. From 1959, Dutch Seahawks were equipped with Sidewinder missiles that significantly enhanced and extended their air-to-air combat capabilities. While never engaged in combat, the aircraft were present as a carrier-based deterrent during the 1962 New Guinea-Indonesia crisis. They served aboard between 1957 and 1964 until Karel Doorman's overhaul, after which the attack role was eliminated and 22 aircraft were transferred to land-based reserve storage. They were all retired from service by the end of the 1960s after the sale of Karel Doorman to Argentina.